Alrighty, guys. Good morning to you all here. It is July 16th, 2025 here on this lovely Wednesday. Hope you guys are all doing well out there. And we're going to start out with the tropics here today. And not great news, but good news here. And it looks to be that right now our Invest 93L is still struggling here. The low ended up moving a little bit further northwest inland last night than we were kind of expecting here. So that is good news in terms of this becoming potentially a named storm. This still could become a named storm. It's got a limited window basically between today and Friday morning, early Friday morning, to get itself together. Low is basically center. We got a low level center up here in and along the Florida Georgia slash line here. No puns intended with that. We've got a lot of convection down here in southern portions of the panhandle, and if some type of low were to get going here, which is possible, and redevelop here, it could move over those warm, very, very warm waters that are actually the warmest in the Gulf right now and head towards Louisiana. This low will be moving toward Louisiana regardless of development or not. Heavy rain being the biggest story, but regardless also if impacts or if a named storm happens or not. But right now, just a lot of disorganization with this storm. That's a good thing here. We'll continue to watch this throughout the day. We'll be getting some recon in today as well. The hurricane hunters will be going out there today and getting samples of what this looks like, kind of trying to figure out where a low is developing and all of that. But right now, just a lot of thunderstorm convection. Like I said, if you're in Louisiana, the southeast here, flooding is going to be the biggest thing. There'll be some tropical tornadoes as we go towards the week here or the weekend here. But other than that, regardless of if this becomes Dexter or not, heavy rain is going to be the biggest impact here. We'll be watching this very, very closely, especially if this goes off into the waters here over the next couple of hours here. But like I said, just not a lot of impressive look this morning here as we should be seeing compared to yesterday here. I do want to also show you guys the long wave water vapor imager here. You can just kind of get an idea of what the convection is doing. We got a cluster of convection really not associated with the actual low itself here, just moving closer to Louisiana. Going to bring some thunderstorms and rainfall over there, but like I said, you got a low up here in the middle of the states here, or in the middle of Florida slash Georgia here, and just not a lot of convection around it. Typically, when you want to see a healthy storm, you want to see convection around it. You want to see that low over the water, and it's not doing that. So once again, guys out there, just be mindful of the information you guys are seeing. There are many, many people out there that are saying that this is going to be a major hurricane, or that this is going to be a ridiculous storm for one to remember for people in Louisiana. The flooding threat, like I said, will be definitely up there, but this is not going to be a hurricane. More than likely, we'll be lucky if this even becomes a tropical depression over the next couple of days. We'll be watching it. Things can change, but we're talking landfall in Louisiana within a 48-hour window here. So not a lot of time for this thing to get itself together. Now, if this were to be already off into the waters, we'd be a little bit more concerned, but it's not right now. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. We'll talk about the rainfall totals and what all that's going to look like here in just a second. I do want to show you guys one more thing just to kind of show you guys where the intensity of this is going to be at here. And we've got what's called intensity track models here, intensity guidance. This is a rough range of all the models here. Most of them are keeping this below tropical storm status, and a couple of them try to get itself together last minute up here before it makes landfall in Louisiana to a tropical storm. So we'll see how that plays out if this were to get into the open waters. Like I said, the waters are very warm. We're talking 2 to 4 degrees above average off the coast of Louisiana there. So not uncommon to see a storm kind of rapidly get itself together, but we'll have to see this low move over the water before we even start to get a little bit more concerned about the intensification of this system here. Here's a lot of our guidance here of what we're going to be seeing here with our models here. This is the latest GEPS GEPS, I cannot get the word right here, showing where that low is going to track. So we do expect it to have a brief period over the open waters potentially here if a new surface low can get going, and then move its way up through Louisiana and then back out here, becoming just a low pressure system. So something to make note of there as well. Just taking another look at our shipping guidance, our hurricane models. Our hurricane models mostly do move this back over the waters, but like I said, if this hugs the coastline, if this is in the water, if this is on land, it's going to make a big difference on if this storm intensifies or not, and then making landfall somewhere in New Orleans, around that vicinity here, and then moving back up into the Louisiana, Arkansas area and bringing rainfall into the weekend. So, like I said, heavy rainfall is going to be the biggest story. And with that being said here, this is the latest WPC outlook for Friday here. We've got a moderate risk still at play here. Yesterday was a moderate risk. Today, still a moderate risk. A little bit of a shift west here into the East Texas, Louisiana line. Slight risk outside of that there for flash flooding. These levels go 1 to 4 in terms of flash flooding potential. Moderate risk being 3 out of 4. Could get a high risk, maybe. I'm not going to rule that out if totals were to go up, but right now we're forecasting about 6 to 10 inches of rain for regions in that moderate risk. Outside of that, there about 3 to 5 inches of rain, some localized higher spots, and then outside of that, in the marginal all the way up here, we could see rainfall up to 1 to 3 inches. So southern Louisiana, you guys need to be ready to go here. East Texas, once again, southern Mississippi here, being prepared for the flooding threat. That's going to be the major threat out of all of this, regardless of if this storm becomes named or not. we'll more than likely have some sea breezes. We'll have some winds up to 40, maybe some 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And then, like I said, we'll have to watch those outer bands, if there are any, for the threat for tropical tornadoes. Now, here's the National Hurricane Center's latest outlook. It's not changed really in 24 hours here. We're still looking at a 40% chance of development in the next 7 days here. Really, it's got a 3-day window to develop technically. So if there were to be a low that develops down in the water later on this afternoon here, as this is officially tracking toward Louisiana, they may upgrade this to a high chance of, becoming a named storm or not. We'll just see. It's going to be all about observing today. We'll have a live stream later on this afternoon. We'll be covering severe weather this afternoon as well. We'll have to talk about that here in a second as well. But we'll be keeping you guys updated. Like I said, I wouldn't be freaking out or anything. There's, like I said, a lot of false information. I've seen a lot of streamers and a lot of other people that don't do weather content for a living, or some do, saying that this is going to be a ridiculous hurricane. This is going to be one for the books or anything like that. That's just nonsense. Don't believe that crap, guys. Be weather aware. Check your facts. All this stuff is publicly allowed to be seen. National Hurricane Center is what I use for the, what most people use to get their outlook from the Hurricane Center here, their official website. We've got Tropical Tidbits is another website I use to show you guys the satellite imagery, all the guidance, all of that stuff, and then Pivotal Weather I use for my model. So we'll go ahead and hop over to Storm Prediction Center here and talk about what we're going to be seeing here for today. And we do have 2 areas to watch, a pretty big marginal risk that extends back down here into the plains and all the way up into the northeast here in UP, Michigan. 2 slight risks today to watch for: a 2% chance of seeing a tornado here with a wind threat and a hail threat. And we have a 5% tornado risk once again for the Chicago area, Milwaukee. You guys have a chance of seeing an isolated tornado today in Chicago, again, Milwaukee, central and southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois here. We'll get to what that looks like here in just a second. And that tornado risk is, once again, a 2% in the green and a 5% here in the maroon. Chicago just west of that 5%, Milwaukee in that Madison. You are dead center in that 2% in the green there, and then another 2% there over here into portions of Wyoming and Colorado, where we've got the threat for another isolated brief couple of tornadoes today. The main threats are actually going to be wind. We do have a 15% wind threat in both yellow spots for wind up to 70 miles per hour, and in the 5% there for winds up to 60 to 70. And then we do have a hail threat, 15% in the maroon there, or not the maroon, but in the yellow across the Rockies here for hail up to 2 inches in diameter. You never can rule out a little bit of hail bigger than that. But mostly should be at 1 to 2 inches in diameter, and then the maroon also up to 1 inch in diameter. So the tornado threat and the wind threat today are really what's going to be cranking, especially up here along the Great Lake here. We've got to be watching out for any brief supercells, any semi-discrete cells that get going. We'll have the chance for a tornado between about 2 o'clock this afternoon and about 8 to 9 p.m. So about a 6 to 7 hour window once again. Now we get to tomorrow, we do have another risk zone once again. We will start to kind of see severe weather a little bit taper off just a little bit here before we get into next week, and I'll talk about next week here again in just a moment. But we do have a marginal risk of severe weather that extends basically from the northeast all the way back down through the Ohio Valley here, most of Kentucky, most of Virginia, West Virginia, most of the states here in the Ohio River Valley, the Missouri Boot Hill, getting up in the northeast, have a chance for a brief isolated tornado up into far extreme New York State, up there near Watertown, near Burlington. We'll have to watch for you guys up there. Wind threat will be the primary threat at 5% for winds up to 60, and the hail threat is less than 5, but not 0, so hail could be about 1 inch for any severe thunderstorm warnings that are out there. We get to the day 3 outlook as well. We don't have any severe weather again for the day 3. We saw this yesterday. This will more than likely get highlighted just because it does. We'll see what happens over the next couple of days here with this, but more than likely we'll see some type of marginal risk pop up. And the Storm Prediction Center is watching for next week, as we do see the threat for a ridge setting up, a high pressure dome, a heat dome. Our first big summertime heat dome will be setting up as we go towards next week, where we will see triple digits for a lot of people. We'll talk about what that looks like in a minute. We'll have some of the highest humidity values of the year so far as well. It's just gonna be a gross week next week. If you've been watching the live streams the last couple of days, we've been talking about it. It's gonna be gross. It's not gonna feel great out there. So with that being said, though, we are gonna have troughing on top of our ridge, which is gonna potentially allow for some significant damaging wind threats, some severe weather to get going, some tornado days, some hail days, some wind gales, and we'll talk about what that looks like here in just a minute. But we'll be waiting for SPC to highlight something going into next week, but I wouldn't be shocked to start seeing that pop up here, not in the too distant future. We'll talk about what the radar is going to be doing for today. We do have an upper level low that is back up here into Iowa and Minnesota, and what we're watching for today is an open warm sector once again. We'll be watching for discrete cells that'll be firing off back down here into portions of Wisconsin and Illinois. Looks to be right around 3 to 5 o'clock we see those storms initiate, and you don't see a lot of coverage. Sometimes the models do okay with this, sometimes they don't, but there will be a cold front in place here where any of these storms that do fire off along this boundary will have a chance at an isolated tornado here along the Great Lakes, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, all the way down here to portions of Peoria, Illinois here. We'll be watching out for you guys. Damaging winds will be the main threat, but there will be that threat for a couple of tornadoes with any cells that get going. You can see a couple of those do get going pretty quickly after 4 or 5 p.m. here as they approach the lakes here, and then eventually these will cross over, and then we might even see an intensifying squall line develop after 7 or 8 p.m. tonight as these do move into Michigan. So we do need to watch Michigan tonight. Might see that risk extend a little bit further in the next update. We'll see what happens here, but this has definitely been a trend for damaging winds and maybe even a QLCS tornado as this goes through Michigan. You don't see a lot of coverage coverage down here in that marginal risk zone. Sometimes the models handle this well, sometimes they don't, but do be mindful. Isolated to maybe some scattered damaging wind could be possible for any storms that do initiate down along the Ohio River Valley today and even into the East Coast and Northeast coastline there. We get to later on this evening into tonight, we're going to have a line of storms that's developed, or a cluster of storms that's going to come off the Rockies here, and we will have the threat for another just heavy rainfall event, maybe some damaging winds maybe embedded in there. Most of this looks to be just general thunderstorms with some small hail and some damaging winds. We'll be watching this after midnight tonight, as well as that will transition eastward and eventually set down a boundary for tomorrow, where we do have severe weather across the lower Ohio Valley tomorrow. We could see some damaging winds, some large hail, maybe up to an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches in diameter. And then we'll be looking at an isolated tornado threat up into the northeast tomorrow, and we'll talk more about that there in the future tomorrow. I do want to show you guys the Rockies here as well. We get an idea of what that slight risk is going to do over here for today. We'll see those storms moving off the Rockies. Like I said, tornadoes will be possible today, isolated tornadoes for any storms that are discrete or semi-discrete, but mostly damaging winds and hail will be the primary threats. Winds up to 70, hail up to 2 inches in diameter, and then we'll see this thing kind of become messy later on tonight with that flooding threat maybe ramping up there. So something to make note of over the next couple of hours here through today and through tomorrow. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Like I said, we'll have a live stream later on this afternoon covering this. I'll be a little bit busy today, so I'm going to try and stream as much as I can for you guys today, but we'll definitely be on a couple of times today giving you guys updates and talking about what's going to be happening here for you guys for the next couple of days. Now, I mentioned, like I said, the overall pattern here is going to be changing. We'll talk about the rainfall totals down here in Florida and down into portions of the southeast here in just a second, but we do have that low pressure down here spinning. We do have a little bit of a wonky trough that's in place here, which is kind of helping get things going for today and for tomorrow. The main threat is going to be, like I said, the damaging wind, the hail threat, and then there will be that isolated tornado threat both today and tomorrow. As we go into Thursday and into Friday, or not Thursday, but Friday into Saturday here, we start to see more of a zonal flow setup. We're going to see that jet stream move west to east. Sometimes this can promote some low wind damaging wind days. I don't expect this to be too much of an issue going into Friday and Saturday, but it's morely as we go towards next week. I want you guys to start to see what happens with our troughing here as we do start to see a big heat dome start to set up going into next week, and this is going to keep temperatures in the triple digits. We're going to have a very high dew point values that are going to allow for moisture to be surging. Instability will be very extreme next week, so any of these troughs that do swing through next week and do put up the chance for severe weather will both have the threat for significant damaging winds. I think will be the most threat out of this. Those MCSs, those line segments that move through, we'll also have to watch the threat for an isolated tornado or two. The hail threat will be there as well, but these typically do promote those derecho like July, August setups that we've typically seen in past years that do promote it. Depends on how far this ridge develops north and where the troughing sets up, but definitely watching severe weather through much of the week next week up into the high plains, up into the Midwest again. And then I want you guys to see this. That ridge will break down and we get a new ridge. This is over 200 hours out. We're just watching this. We're taking this with a grain of salt, but really watching the end of July here as we see a big time ridge really get going as we go toward the end of the month, potentially setting up a northwesterly flow. And these set up big time derecho potential setups. So that's something I'm watching very, very closely as we end the month of July going into the first week of August. That's typically around the time frame we see these big wind events set up. So something to make note of. But if you are in the plains, the Ohio Valley, much of the southeast here, we are going to see a massive heat wave set up next week where temps are probably going to be about 15 to 20 degrees above average than what they've been at already. And that's going to allow for those dew points to go up. Like I said, instability will be there. So any severe weather that gets going, we'll be watching very closely, especially across the Great Lakes here, where we do typically see severe weather this time of the year. And I will show you guys briefly here as well what those temperatures are going to be looking like. And like I said, right now we're in the 90s. We've got some triple digits out there here and there. But watch as we go into next week, we're going to see that heat dome build, and build. We'll see those triple digits across the plains there, up into the Midwest there, into the Ohio Valley. You can see some hundreds on the board there. And then going into the following week, as that next ridge sets up, we'll see even bigger temperatures potentially climbing into the triple digits and 90s there, with those heat indexes probably approaching the 110s, maybe 115, maybe even approaching 120. So that just means your time limited is out, or your time outside is going to be limited, depending on what age group you're in terms of like how you can breathe outside, your illnesses, all that stuff. So just be mindful, drink water, stay hydrated. If you were going out through the next 2 weeks here, where we'll probably see one of our biggest heat waves of the year so far. And I mentioned as well, those dew points are going to be pretty high. You can see those 70s and possibly some 80s as the corn sweat belt gets going up into the Midwest here. This is going to allow for the fuel for thunderstorms, for severe weather. And then, like I said, on top of that, just plain old hot. When you see those pinks showing up there, or those 80 plus degree dew points, that is signaling some really, really hectic breathing weather in terms of how your lungs are going to be able to breathe in this hot, humid weather. So just going to be a gross week next week and really going into the last week of July. So we'll keep you guys updated about this. We'll talk more about this in streams over the next couple of days here. And I want to show you guys those rainfall totals that we're going to be seeing again back across the United States here, with Louisiana being the primary threat for the next couple of days. The models are continuing to kind of bounce around with the idea of about 6 to 10 inches of rainfall down here in southern Louisiana, with some local spots maybe exceeding that. Most of Florida's rainfall is pretty much done. We'll see about an additional 1 to 3 inches of rainfall for any general thunderstorms, scattered thunderstorms that develop throughout the day. But I want you guys to see, as we start to get towards next week, we start to see a new area of higher rainfall totals emerge, and that could be the Ohio River Valley, basically from the Midwest going down, as we see these complexes of storms work their way through kind of day in and day out. So something to watch very, very closely. We've been seeing this trend. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Also, according to the tropics right now, we're going to potentially watch maybe our major development region to start to get going here as we go toward the end of the month as well. We're starting to see some signs at some lows coming off the coast of Africa. So we'll be watching the tropics as we do get closer to peak hurricane season. I know it's been kind of quiet through the first 2 months here, but typically August, September, and October do present some pretty wild things. So we'll be watching the tropics for you guys and keeping you guys updated with that. I'll have a live stream later on this afternoon with full details, breakdowns on what's going to be happening with Invest 93L. As I mentioned, you guys, be weather aware, know what's going on with your weather, be prepared for flooding if you're down in the southeast there, and just be mindful of what you guys see on social media, because there's a lot of crap going on just false information. So we'll keep you guys updated. Be safe, be weather aware, and we'll see you guys in the next one.